This is a very exciting time. This is about how to get rich, not quick rich, not any kind of scheme or anything like that, but how to get rich. And I'm going to take the model of the book written by Robert Kiyosaki and Donald Trump, um, titled Why We Want You to Get Rich. These are two best-selling authors. I'm sure everybody knows them. Here's Donald Trump right here. There's a picture of him. And in commemoration of Trump, I combed over my hair so it would look like his a little bit. I did my best job trying. Um, but Robert Kiyosaki wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm going to talk about that also eventually. But before we figure out how to get rich, we have to talk about the problems we're facing, the financial problems we're facing with healthcare and Social Security and Medicare and all that stuff. So I'm going to I have a lot of notes here, so I'm going to just go over them all. In one of Donald Trump's books, The America We Desire, he said, the U.S. government's General Accounting Office, better known as the GAO, is an objective investigative arm of the Congress, paints an ugly picture. They say unlike Social Security, Medicare has been experiencing cash flow deficits since 1992. Current payroll, taxes, and other revenues have been insufficient to cover benefit payments and program expenses. The current Medicare program is both economically and fiscally unsustainable. This is not a new message. The Medicare trustees noted in the early 1990s that the program is unsustainable in its present form. Politicians, what are they doing? Well, Bill Clinton stared at the beast and blinked. He chose to avoid the hard decisions that will have to be made down the road, where the GAO points out they will be much more painful. About long-term health care, he says, there's one more aspect of the medical insurance story that is almost totally off the typical radar screen. This one involves long-term care. With the baby boom generation heading toward retirement and their parents already there, this is a huge issue. The number of elderly will double to 75 million by 2030, and the number of seniors living in nursing homes will increase fivefold. Um, but most people are probably asking, doesn't Medicaid pay for nursing homes? And that's what a lot of baby boomers ask and stuff. And the answer is Medicaid was never meant to be a long-term care provider. The growing demand for long-term care is pushing Medicaid into bankruptcy. Nearly 1 in 2 Americans will need some type of long-term care, but only 1 in 4 can afford long-term private nursing home care, which now averages $41,000. That was in 1999 a year. Only 1% of Americans have bought the long-term health care insurance, so most are hoping to rely on Medicaid. As things are right now, they're in for major disappointment. After a short initial contribution, Medicaid will drop out of the picture until the patient's resources are spent down to the poverty level. If the patients are your parents, that means everything they've worked for in life will be gone, and that often means one parent is left destitute. It can also create a massive financial burden on families. The boomer who planned to sail around the world on his own boat might find himself selling his car to keep mom or dad in a decent facility. Um, just to show a little diagram I drew up here. There it is. Income versus expenses, assets versus liabilities. Social Security $10 trillion, Medicare $62 trillion. Yeah, $72 trillion. And that's coming from two economists, and that was in 1994, Kent Smetters and Jagadish Gokhale. Um, and that's the government's obligation to the American people at that time. Um, I believe, the value of all stocks in the world stock markets as of 2000 was around 36 trillion, and the value of all the bonds on the bond markets of the world was only about 31 trillion. We owe our people more than all the money in the stock and bond markets of the world combined. Um, we can't pay it. The only way we can pay it is if we print more money, which would wipe out the savings of everyone, or if you use hyperinflation, which, for those of you that don't know what hyperinflation is, um, it'll send this country into a depression. Um, the value of a dollar in hyperinflation will be worth almost nothing. Um, So people on fixed incomes, and not only are savings going to be wiped out, fixed incomes, people that are on that will be wiped out also, because people are living longer, and that's just a fact. I mean, people are living longer. Um, you have to go back to your history and look in the 30s when the Great Depression came. FDR was elected president, and he created Social Security. Um, he thought it was a solution, but the problem still is here today. It was only a temporary fix. It was never meant to be supplemental income for people. It was meant at the time so people could live and die, with some ounces of respect, so they weren't on the streets or anything like that. Until the depression was over, and then people got used to it, and God forbid we talk about privatizing it now, even 1% of it. Um, but just something else on Social Security. I don't have a lot of time. Let's say you pay in, I don't know, $80,000 in your lifetime. By the time you collect that money, if you would have invested that privately, just looking at the general growth of the stock market over the last 30 years, okay, your 80 grand that you would be collecting would be worth 20 times what what it is. I mean, it's basically the government borrowing your money to invest. And people are just so scared, though, when you talk about privatizing even 1% of it. It's just, it's really a shame that the financial education in this country is lacking so much. Um, it really is. Um, Other government programs that were meant to be solutions were Medicare 1955 and Medicaid 1966. Today, these problems are much bigger problems, again, because we failed to address the real problem. We want people to let go of the entitlement mentality and become rich so they can solve the problem, their own problems. So it's not a burden to me, future generations, or the government that can't afford it and will not have the money. The U.S. dollar is falling, and savers find their savings wiped out with very little left for retirement, except for Social Security and Medicare, which are also in trouble. History is repeating itself, only this time the problem is bigger. Um, what you're really concerned about, though, is the entitlement mentality as a nation. And it's not just poor people, it's everybody. From presidents to senators, everybody expects a pension from the government, and they want government to solve their problems. Well, we could ask the rich to pay for everyone, but that wouldn't really solve the problem. Um, it would just put another band aid on the problem. Um, but if you become rich, you can solve your own problem. So that's what I encourage you to do. Um, we as a nation cannot solve a large financial crisis with the same old thinking. This entitlement mentality is everywhere. It's become an epidemic in our economy. Groupthink, which a good definition for groupthink is a term coined by the social psychologist Irving Janis in 1972. It occurs when a group of people makes faulty decisions because of group pressure. Um, that's another crazy thing. People who are capable of thinking for themselves will rarely be part of any herd. While we're focused on the groupthink that keeps people from thinking for themselves financially and has them blindly turning their money over to financial advisors. Um, we need people who can think out of the box. Um, we need to start thinking like that no matter where we live or what we do. The best way to have an edge is to live on one. What they're saying is, in order to solve these problems today, we need to get smart really quick. And I would like to see financial literacy put in schools. I will do my part to make sure that happens because we need to learn at a very early age how important credit is, how important it is not to rely on friends, family, or the federal government. You do not, your dignity is gone at that point, okay, when you have to ask or beg for help. Nobody wants to see anybody in that situation. I'm not going to be in that situation. I don't want to see you in that situation. We'll work together to fix the problem. And now that we know what the problem is, we can start to address it and figure out how we can get rich today.